Steak is the last thing I would think about making for on board the aircraft. There's so many challenges to it. So we're going to utilize a steak today that is going to still taste tender and juicy, even though it's been made 10 hours before you might enjoy it. So I have chosen to use skirt steak. This steak is delicious and it has great fat, but it also is very tender if you cut it the right way. Salt, steak, salt, that goes hand in hand, right? But salt is something I want to try to limit because it causes swelling and inflammation. So first thing I'm going to do to the steak is add some more flavor to it by adding a marinade. It doesn't have any sugar. The acid is fresh from a tomato. There's lots of good flavor from those chilies. They're great anti-inflammatories, as well as I'm adding some really good plant-based fiber into that meal. One of the unique aspects of in-flight eating is that you're eating in a different environment. The air pressure that is pressurized into the cabin is low, and the moisture level or humidity that's in the air is also very low. Both of those affect how your taste buds work. What you smell, those things are impacted because your olfactory is dry. And so really important to boost all of those flavors. So in the catering kitchen, after the food gets chilled, they will plate these foil kits, all the garnishes, all the food wrapped up neatly, put into those little carts that we all know running down the aisle, and then those carts go into a cooler where they have to sit and be refrigerated for a minimum of 4 hours. So the steak by itself is not a complete meal. I have garbanzo cake. If I had made a cake with just regular flour, higher glucose index, not as enjoyable to sit on your flight when your blood sugar then spikes and then crashes. We also have some braised vegetables with a little bit of oregano and garlic. Key moment here. We want to cut the skirt steak against the grain. The reason why I'm slicing this steak, even though it's going to be reheated, is so that the passenger gets this steak cut in the right direction so that it is tender. On board the aircraft, you don't have the same steak knife you might get in a steakhouse restaurant. That would not be a good idea. So I have to really think in terms of being the passenger in the seat and how would I end up eating. Next, we're going to add our cilantro lime crema. I'm just going to give us a nice big dollop. We're going to give up nice green onions and a couple little fresh cilantro leaves. My favorite thing working with Singapore Airlines is the flight crew and the chefs. They do such a great job of recreating these dishes just as I'm showing you today, up at 40,000 feet in the air.
So I choose today to make a very classic. I learned this when I was 14 years old at school. It's called a steak sauté Bercy. What you're learning here is two techniques. First, the cooking of the steak, and to make a sauce à la minute. I'm using a prime age strip steak, bone in. When it's aged, it's better because it's more tender, and you can see all the fat inside. You need fat in the steak for the flavor, the softness. We want to make sure that our pan is hot, and we're gonna use clarified butter. French cooking, everything is clarified butter. A little bit of canola oil to balance the butter and the oil. Nice. If you like it medium rare, it's gonna be 5-6 minutes on each side. If you like it more than that, it will go to 8 minutes. Me, I like it like between 3 and 4 minutes on each side. Bleu. You have bleu, saignant, à point, and well done. Bien cuit. If you like it well done, do it, you know. You're losing the whole flavor. Beautiful steak. Nice color. What you want to keep is what's inside the pan. That's gonna give the taste to your sauce. We're gonna add just a teaspoon of butter. So now we're gonna make the sauce Bercy. We just sweat the shallots. Be careful not to burn the shallots. And we need to scrub those pieces of meat that we have left in the bottom of the pan. So now I'm gonna add the white wine. So we're gonna reduce a little bit, so everything goes fast. Your steak is here, it's not gonna get cold by the time you make your sauce. Now we're gonna add some beef stock. And then I'm just gonna add some parsley into the sauce. Then I'm gonna take my sauce. I'm just gonna add a little bit of salad. Voila.
Japanese Wagyu teppanyaki with seasonal vegetable. Japanese Wagyu is very fatty and rich taste, so delicious, of course expensive. Today is a Japanese mushroom, maitake, and the shimeji mushroom, shiitake mushroom, Japanese pumpkin, kabocha, and the Japanese sweet pepper, the manganchi from Kyoto. Deep fried, but not 100%, just 50% cooked. I'm gonna take salt and pepper. Pans are very hot, so a little bit oil. And one side, nice color, made. Next, vegetable inside. Yeah, very quickly. Then salt. Salt is the red wine, soy sauce, mirin, garlic, red chili, Japanese steak sauce. Sliced onion, put oil, little bit toast. Very hot. Iron plate. Fried garlic. Finish.
What I have here is a bone-in ribeye steak. It's been resting for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be resting for too long, but let it sit out for like 10 minutes just so it's not cold when it goes into the pan. All right, so our pan is nice and hot. We're gonna add our grapeseed oil and let it sit for a few minutes. So the fat cap, on its own, it might be a little unpleasant to eat, but if you melt it down, it's gonna release a little bit from the steak and then integrate into the rest of the steak. That's perfect. Now we can commit to a side and place it down. I think students often feel for the dish to be great, they have to be moving and in control and stirring, but a lot of times you just need to let it be. So some steaks that are more tough do better with things like marinating, things that kind of tenderize them more. But this guy is so rich on his own and with a pretty soft protein, just a little lacquer is gonna be great. My thermometer, I want to insert it close to the bone because that's where the temperature is going to be the lowest. So we're at 86 degrees. So I'm going to take my ribeye into the oven where we're going to let it finish cooking until the temperature by the bone is 105 degrees Fahrenheit. After we take it out of the oven, it's going to continue to cook. The temperature is going to continue to increase. So I also note I have it on a wire rack. This is going to allow airflow to flow underneath so the bottom is not going to get soft. So I'm just gonna let it rest for about 10 minutes. So once it comes out of the oven, it's pretty hot and it's gonna absorb a lot of the lacquer. So the ribeye we wanna cut against the grain. Against the grain means we're gonna have smaller fibers in our bite, which is gonna make it less overly chewy, a little more tender and more enjoyable. So what I have here is olive oil that has garlic, lemon peel, orange peel, and rosemary infused into it. I'm gonna add a little aioli on the plate, just as a little base for the asparagus. And this is a lovely centerpiece for your table to serve to your guest.
We're gonna do steak and eggs. We're gonna use a petite tender filet. This is the little piece from the filet mignon. The filet mignon. In the end, it's a little piece of meat. This is what it is. All right, petite tender. A lot of people don't use it. A lot of chefs just cut it and give it to the family. We use it. And if you come to Brooklyn Diner, you're gonna enjoy it. Okay, the pan is super hot. The petite goes there. Did you hear it? That's what you want. You want some music to your ears. Boom. We put them in the filet mignon in the oven because it's easy for us to manage. If you want to cook this piece of meat in the pan, it's not gonna cook. It's gonna burn in the outside. It's gonna be raw in the inside. I don't put salt in the beginning. I put salt in the end. For sure, black pepper. All right. Both sides, huh? And this filet mignon is gonna go to the oven. 300 degrees, 350 for 4 minutes. Normally we cook part in the diner for service because it's too busy. We do anything from 300 to 400 covers for breakfast. So that's a lot of hungry people coming in. So meat's ready, you can see it. Normally in the restaurant, you gotta touch the meat, right? You have a thermometer to do it, but you never use it because you're busy and you know exactly what it is. So this is medium rare. Medium is perfect. Let them rest for a couple minutes. And then we're gonna plate it. You see there? You see? Very little blood. That's what you want. And I'm a Latino guy, all right? Latino people like some spicy sauce with it. So I make for you some mojito. It's like chimichurri sauce, but it's done with cilantro. So we're gonna get some oil, very important. And there you have it. Steak and eggs by Brooklyn Diner.
So sometimes, like at the Plaza Hotel, we have to put meals for over 300 people. When you want to cook one steak for a 600 people or huge events, the consistency will not be maybe there. But with beef Wellington, it takes really more time to prepare, but it will be always perfect. We always use filet mignon at the Plaza Hotel to make sure there is the flavor there and the tenderness of the steak. So we have here the buff pastry on a tray to make sure there is enough baking paper underneath so it's not gonna stick. We have here the mushroom duxelle. It's been made with mini mushroom, sauteed with shallots and parsley. So now we will have the filet mignon and then just place it on top of the duxelle. So that's a basic Wellington. But at the Plaza, we do it all special. We add seared duck liver. It gives the beef Wellington just more tender and just extra high quality special taste. So at the Plaza, we have almost like 64 cooks that working is under me. So when we do the beef Wellington, we break it down to like 3 stations. So there will be some people are putting the buff pastry, some cook will be doing like putting the duxelle, and another chef will be finishing with the duxelle, filet mignon, and the foie gras. The secret to work with buff pastry, just like making sure it is really a room temperature, not to leave it outside for long, because if you leave it outside, it's gonna be like, you know, very sticky and you will not have it really puffed. Making sure there is no airs inside, because if there is air, you will not have it very crisp. Here we have an egg yolk only, and then we bake it in the oven. It will take 20 minutes at 325 degrees. We have the beef Wellington ready. This is the moment of truth. Now we're gonna see how it's perfect inside. So now to finish the dish, we have a black pepper sauce that will go on the dish. And to make it special at the plaza, we always add our special touch, black truffle. And to complete our perfect dinner, mashed potato and steamed asparagus.
When you're running a Michelin star restaurant, people are not going to expect to come in for a steak and potato dish, so we have to bring some spins to it. So today I'm using a cut of American Wagyu. I know Japanese has a really luxurious connotation with it, but it is much more expensive and much more fatty. I love the rib cap. It's almost tender like the filet mignon, but has like the fatty marbling and the flavor of the ribeye. Our first step with the Wagyu is to marinate it. And this here is maple syrup and koji. So after a few hours, you can see that the meat is almost starting to tighten up a little bit. A little of the moisture starts to come out of it from the natural cure of the marinade. So as my pan is getting very hot, I'm going to give the steak a little bit more of a seasoning. I'm just going to put a touch of canola oil because it is very sticky from the marinade. For this cut of Wagyu, because it is such a fatty cut of meat, I don't want it too raw through the center. I want the fat to really have a chance to melt. So I'm going to pull it off to let it rest just for a little bit. So the color and the caramelization is really nice on this, but it definitely did not cook on this grill long enough to be cooked through the center. So I'm going to go finish it in the oven around 350 for about 4-ish minutes until it comes to temp. On a night in the restaurant, we would set the plate while the cook is finishing the steak itself. So this is a Japanese pickled mustard green. Next are seared mushrooms. They're still nice and hot. I'm adding a little bit of a kabocha squash puree, which pairs really nicely with the koji and maple itself. This is just some scallion julienne and micro shiso, which is used in Japanese cuisine a lot, and one of my favorite herbs. A little bit of nori powder. All right, at this point, we would be getting the sliced steak to plate it. I'm gonna trim off the edges. And this is what we all get to snack on and eat during a night. So you can see it's really tender and delicate. Give it a touch of Malden just to hit the center of it. And then lastly at the restaurant, table side, they would pour a little bit of our beef jus over the top.
This dish is the Cafe Mars version of steak pizzole, steak in the style of the pizza maker. The cut of steak that I'm using today is flat iron. Flat iron is a cut that was made famous by Applebee's to find a delicious but not too expensive cut of steak. We find that it is very tender but has a lot of the flavor that we're looking for. I'm gonna cook this steak sous vide, make sure that it has an even cook every time without having to spend a lot of time babying the steak. The steak has been in the water bath for 2 hours at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been chilled down after a quick rest. So we see a little smoke come off the pan. I'm testing the waters so that I don't splash myself with oil and get the steak used to being hot. I use fish weights on this flat iron steak because it's not always flat, even though that's the name. And because the steak is already cooked, we can go high heat, get tons of flavor and caramelization and a crust on the steak, and there is no chance that this steak will be overcooked. So now my steak is rested, seasoning with crunchy salt. I am not slicing a steak. I believe that everyone can slice steak on their own, and by not slicing a steak, we retain the juices inside much longer and retain the heat inside much longer. In Sweden, every pizzeria has a giant bowl of cabbage seasoned with olive oil and black pepper. We add gremolata next. So these are triangular penne that we extrude in-house from semolina and water. We deep fry them at 375 degrees Fahrenheit and they puff up. And this is a technique that you may have seen if you've ever been to Taco Bell and had cinnamon twists, which are actually overcooked pasta. This sauce is the cheese component of our steak pizzole. The only cheese in this is 4-year-old Parmesan, which is not a cheese that should be able to melt. We've added something called sodium citrate to make this cheese melt. We have essentially made nacho cheese sauce with all flavor of 4-year-old Parmesan. Marinated dried tomatoes, chervil oil. Our last herb garnish is curly parsley. That's the dish.
So a 5-year-old would have a very difficult time using a knife to cut a steak. And this is one of the reasons why Salisbury steak is served in New York City public schools. So before anything, our patties do come pre-cooked, and this is to ensure quality control and to meet the nutritional standards for New York City public schools. So the beef that we use is 100% ground beef with no fillers. No mystery meat in this recipe. So we are gonna go ahead and pop our steak and our sweet potato fries into the oven. Usually Salisbury steak is served with a gravy and mushrooms. So we're just using a small pinch of salt because we are taking into consideration the sodium content of this recipe itself. I'm just currently making one small portion, but normally in schools, this would be batch in a larger scale where you would have the mushrooms tossed inside of a hotel pan with the spinach and the onions, covered in aluminum foil and popped in the oven. So even though our steaks are pre-cooked, we still take safety measures into consideration by probing the steaks to reach the proper temperature. So now we're gonna go ahead and assemble our Salisbury steak. So here we have, in addition to our Salisbury steak, is a nice composed salad called kachumber salad. The salad consists of tomatoes, onions, cucumbers, and something that we like to call healing spices, which consist of ginger, turmeric, cumin, and cinnamon. And then our all-vegetarian gravy. All of our sauces come pre-made to ensure quality and nutritional standards. Now, to complete this as a full meal, we have to include our dairy, and if the kids choose to, they can have an additional fruit. I love the colors of this dish.
Today I'm gonna make Korean barbecue ribeye, served up Sam style. Sam in Korean means to wrap, and so we're gonna serve it up with some kimchi, some sides, and wrap it with wonderful lettuce wraps. This is a center cut ribeye. Why I like using those is it has this beautiful decal. It has a ton of flavor, and what we're looking for is some great marbling. Here we have a pretty traditional Korean marinade. It's gonna be with soy, corn syrup. Why we use corn syrup is that there's nothing that really kind of produces that glaze and that sheen. Other things like aromatics, ginger, scallion, garlic, ton of Asian pear as well to add that fruity element. I've got this ribeye that's been marinating in a vac bag for 3 days. It's gonna marry all the flavors and kind of inject it into the steak. We wanna pat the surface of it dry so we can get a beautiful sear. Traditionally in Korean cooking, again, it was a pretty poor country. Ribeye, not generally found, but it's kind of a little bit of fun we get to have, taking this kind of prime cut and infusing it with Korean marinade. So I'm gonna take this into the oven now after it's gotten a nice sear, and we'll finish it in there. So our steak has been finished, it's been rested. It's been in the oven for about 5 minutes. We're waiting for it to come up to temperature, which is a nice medium rare. I'm gonna slice it. We have two parts. We have the top of the decal, and we have the center cut ribeye here. The decal, because how the rib is shaped, it only kind of comes in the center part. So if you get a ribeye that's closer kind of the tail, you're gonna have a smaller decal. So again, kind of when you go to your butcher, you wanna ask for kind of the third, fourth rib to have the top cap that you'd like. We're gonna have some mustard greens here. We have some onions in the middle here. We're gonna serve up and plate our ribeye. And just to finish it off, we're gonna take some of the marinade, finish off with some scallions and toasted sesame seeds. And there we have our Korean ribeye, Sam style.
This is my steak, and I got it at ShopRite because it's a thick piece of steak. I'm gonna start off with seasoning it. So right now, I'm putting on butter because you need to rub the spices in with something. So right now, I just added cumin. I like the smoked paprika because it adds a smoky flavor. I might over-season, but I think I'm taking into account also that Indian food has a lot of spices, an overwhelming amount of spices, but it never tastes like it's an overwhelming amount of spices. So now that I've washed my hands, I'm gonna start by heating up our fun sounding grill. I'm heating it to about medium. So what I've experienced in the past is that the outside is just completely burnt and the inside is not at all cooked. So that's why I'm trying to go slow with it, and hopefully it'll work. This is my splatter guard. It's used for anything that doesn't have a lid because for some reason there's never a lid for anything. I'm poking the steak so that a little bit more heat flows through it. So I know that it works with chicken. That's how that works. I'm thinking I should cut this in half. Maybe working with 2 smaller ones will help. I'm a little bit more skittish with how it's cooked. Gotta cook it all the way through. I think it's cooked. If anything, it smells great and looks great. So that's something. We've let this rest for a little bit. I don't think there's a thing about cutting with the grain and against the grain. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know where the grain is. We're gonna plate it first with just some arugula on the bottom. So these are sauteed onions, a little bit of parsley all around the plate. For not knowing how to cook my steak properly, this is pretty good.
Today I'm going to be using a grass-fed piece of beef. Grass-fed steaks have less marbling versus corn-fed or grain-fed smoked beef is more fatty. We're just gonna do some salt, some black pepper. This is some flaky sea salt. It adds a nice crunch to the texture as well and creates like a little crust. So now in our skillet, we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil, and I'm gonna bring this up to a medium-high heat. So we see it smoking, but a little trick I like to do is add a little bit of salt. See how it's little dancing? It's ready to go. Don't rush it. Let the pot do its thing. And then when it's time, give it a flip and then add the flavor to the pot. I'm gonna add some butter to the pot. Next, I'm gonna add in some fresh pieces of garlic. And then I'm about to go herb crazy. Here we got some fresh oregano, some fresh thyme, some fresh rosemary, and a fresh bay leaf, because why not? And I'm gonna just add all that garlic, herby butter directly to our meat. It smells so good. I know y'all jealous. I'm gonna just put the steak on the side. Now that our steaks are seared and they had some time to rest, now we're going to cut them and begin plating. So today we're gonna make a steak salad. So I have some mixed greens, some arugula, some bib lettuce, some spinach, roasted corn, red onions, and cucumbers. I have some sauteed asparagus here. And then we're gonna top off our steak with some Scotch bonnet infused sea salt, Scotch bonnet because I am Caribbean and I love to bring the heat. We're also gonna top it off with some charcoal salt just to add a little bit of smokiness. And then we're gonna finish it with this homemade chimichurri. Let's add a little bit more of this. Let's add some more razzle dazzle. Got all that goodness here.
Oh, the flavors are amazing.
Crunchy.
That is so good.
Perfect for me.
Very delicious.
This is chewable.